Chapter 5. It was reasonably sunny outside. Birds danced about in the air, there were flowers in full bloom, and all of the trees were proudly displaying their colors. I watched the clouds gently drift overhead as I walked down the street. Not being in any particular hurry worked well for me in this sense. I was able to keep my legs and hooves going in the right directions, and it helped me blend in better with passing ponies. Regardless of my blending, of course, I still heard hushed whispers as I passed. Usually they involved either my flank or talk of cutie marks directly. Sighing, I tried not to pay them any heed as I considered names. I had to call myself something after all. Regardless, there were only 2 ponies I'd yet to introduce myself to out of Twilight's 5 friends. I considered Fluttershy, but thought better of it for now. In my current state of comfort with my nakedness, there was liable to be some kind of accident, which would embarrass both of us, so that left only one choice. Finally arriving, I stood in front of a small door to the Carousel Boutique. Apparently, Rarity owned this establishment, and from what I heard, she held herself in a very respectable manner. Less chance of accidents, I would assume. Bracing myself, I lightly knocked on her door. As I waited, I contemplated how to greet a pony like her. She was one of the elements of harmony, after all, and held herself in a very regal light. I'd have to try and remember my manners and be polite. I didn't want to screw up this first impression after all my prior mistakes. The door opened, and I bowed politely in an instant. "Good afternoon, miss. I was told I could meet you here." I greeted as properly as I could muster. I was more than a little nervous. There was a light giggling instead of the type of response I'd been expecting, and I raised my head curiously. A light gray filly with a purple and pink mane greeted me instead. Oh, Sweetie Belle, right? I re-greeted, recalling her from before.
You remembered me! Yay! I'm Rarity's little sister. Are you looking for her?
She asked, giving me a warm smile. I nodded and smiled back. Yeah. I'm trying to get to know ponies around town, so I figured I'd start with those Twilight was already friends with. You know, it's a little easier for me. I tried to explain. Of course, in the back of my head, I knew I meant safer. Friends of a nice pony are more likely to be nice, and less likely to think that I'm a nut. I chastised myself for the white lie. Sweetie Belle nodded immediately.
Makes sense. I'm sorry for my friends chasing you the other day, by the way,
she offered, turning and leading me back into the house. Don't worry about it. I wasn't exactly in the best mindset anyway. I wouldn't have run otherwise, I explained. I wasn't going to hold it against a few young children regardless. Sweetie Belle stopped suddenly, and I almost smashed into her. A few seconds later, she turned around, eyes getting watery.
Can you please help my friends and I find our cutie marks? If there's a chance we could simply not get them, I'd...
She started to rapidly spell out. I put a hoof to her muzzle and nodded. I'll help you as best I can. And don't worry, I think I'm something of an exception, I assured her. Her expression shifted to a smile, and she nodded to me before wiping her eyes with a hoof. She was worried about it, clearly. This mark must have been a really big deal. Farther down the hall, a door suddenly cracked open.
My. Good with fools and kind. Very nice indeed.
A soft, lightly accented voice spoke. A pure white mare exited the room into the hallway and smiled at me. Her mane was a beautiful purple color, both long and professionally styled. My eyes widened and I bowed politely, again. Miss Rarity, I presume. An honor. I spoke quickly, ever a little shakily. Giggling issued from the filly to my left now as she pretended to bow as well.
Oh my, and he has manners,
she exclaimed, a tone of amusement and fake shock dancing in her voice.
What brings you to my lovely carousel boutique?
She asked eloquently. I'm going to be staying at Twilight's for a while, and I wanted to get to know some ponies in town, I started to explain.
So we decided to start with Friends of Twilight,
Sweetie Belle added with a small bounce. Rarity slowly circled around me a couple of times, as if sizing me up. I tried to stay still, regardless of feeling awkward as hell.
A good idea, of course. Friendship is very important. No cutie mark indeed,
she muttered, mostly to herself. Sweetie Belle nodded rapidly.
Yeah, I was telling the truth, sis. But the cutie mark Crusaders are gonna help him get his,
she reminded, batting her eyes up at me. I nodded weakly. Yeah, it's true. No cutie mark, no name, and basically no memory of anything past 3 days ago, I said, watching her finally come to a stop in front of me.
Well, that's very unfortunate. Has Twilight had any thoughts as to what happened, or if you can get your memories back?
Rarity asked, not really looking at me, but looking around the hallway instead. Curious as I was as to what she was looking for, I had to prioritize lest I offended. Well, she wants to investigate where I woke up at, and she's been using her magic to help me try and remember things, but so far not much luck, I explained, getting a bit distraught as she suddenly pranced into the room she had just exited.
Ooh, measuring?
Sweetie Belle asked, sprinting after her sister in an instant. Flustered, I had no idea if I should follow her or if I should wait in this hallway. It was awfully dark in here now that I thought about it, which seemed weird, as she should be open this time of the day, right? Wait, did I enter through the right door? Slapping my forehead with a huff, I suddenly realized that in all likelihood, I'd entered through a side door. Well, that'd be why I'd had to knock rather than seeing shop windows or something. Now feeling very stupid, again, I slunk towards the open door and peeked in. And sure enough, it was a large boutique filled to the brim with beautiful-looking dresses on display. My eyes widened as I stuck my head in and peeked around. It definitely largely catered to females, it would seem, but that only made sense. She probably wouldn't get nearly as much business keeping a half-to-half ratio with a gender ratio this heavily skewed.
Do come in, silly, and let me welcome you to my carousel boutique. Please have a seat and some of my delicious tea,
Rarity requested suddenly in an assured voice. My eyes locked onto her in a plush-looking lounge chair, relaxing pleasantly. Another similar chair was across from it with some sort of elegant coffee table between. I idly wondered if they had coffee here. The way she was sitting just oozed elegance, and her triple diamond cutie marks was proudly displayed on her flank as she lounged. A clipboard drifted up in front of her by itself as she motioned with her horn. Sweetie Belle sat at the foot of the other chair, looking towards me expectantly with a tape measure floating next to her. Wait, they were taking measurements? Why? I suddenly started to panic, worried that they thought I was going to purchase something. Why are you taking measurements? I asked, hesitantly walking towards the empty lounge chair. Rarity gave a pleasant smile before responding with,
Well, in case you need any orders in the future, of course. Plus, stallions of your size are rare around these parts, and with you as a model, I might be able to appeal to a more of the city type with my suits.
Of my size? I asked, mentally breathing a sigh of relief now that I realized she wasn't expecting to acquire some of my non-existent currency. Future note to self, look up the name of the currency here. Pity it wasn't in any of the books Twilight had let me borrow. Rarity gave me a suddenly blank look. She recovered rapidly, however, and shook her hoof repeatedly.
Oh, think nothing of it at all, silly. You just have a more slender build. Anyway, do sit down on the chair. Sweetie Belle will take your measurements, and I shall record them. And I simply must hear your story from the beginning. Feel free to share while we work.
She rapidly excused. I raised an eyebrow and glanced down at my body as I lay down in the chair. My stomach was basically non-existent, and I could count several of my ribs still. My mind hadn't been adjusting very well to this vegetarian diet, and I doubt I had much to eat before I came to this world. Was she referring to my gaunt, deathly appearance or something? A little irked, I looked back up at her as she was starting to look flustered.
No, you have a very, healthy-looking shape. Most of the stallions around here are all big and burly, so it's nice to have a change of pace.
She tried explaining, giving a weak, reassuring smile after. Sighing, I lay my head down on the chair and the cushion and just let the little filly work out measurements. It's fine. I think I get it anyway, I muttered, feeling a bit disheartened at my appearance now. I really needed to do something about these hormones. Why were they so much stronger than before? My old body was well past puberty, after all, I think. Rarity looked a little flustered still, but I decided to change the topic by launching into the story she had requested. Hopefully I could still recover her first impression. It took over an hour, much to my surprise. For the most part, that was because of the measurements distracting me and Sweetie Belle's almost insatiable curiosity about the various situations. Rarity surprised me by only commenting or asking questions when I paused or when it actually fit. It wasn't too bad, though. Rarity's tea was actually really good, even if it took me a bit of practice to sip with the teacup. She politely showed me how best to hold it and manipulate it with my mouth to drink. Well, drink without accidentally inhaling it, or spilling it all over the place. Sadly, that took me a couple of tries. The measuring was done long before my story was concluded, but both mare and filly listened intently to the very end. The attention and focus made me feel kind of awkward, but not in a bad way. Rarity must have noticed my discomfort towards the end and raised an eyebrow.
My, you must have either a bit of a flush or are terribly uncomfortable about something,
she concluded, still wearing her pleasant smile. Chuckling, I shook my head. Well, no. I'm just not used to this kind of attention. I don't really remember what my life was like before, but I have a feeling I was never really the focus of attention, I explained.
Aw, but your story was interesting. I wanted to pay attention,
Sweetie Belle reassured, smiling happily. Rarity nodded along.
Indeed. You needn't be humble, although it is a praiseworthy attribute. You must stand out, however. I think you would look amazing in a lightly tapered dress coat. Something simple with a solid coloring, maybe some gemstone buttons to offset him.
My eyes widened. Gemstones? Ugh, I swallowed painfully. As much as your assurance is appreciated, I don't think I'll have enough currency anytime in the near future to purchase something as, amazing as these clothes. The quality looks way out of my budget, I said, gesturing around myself at all of the colorful clothing and dresses adorning the stands and walls. Rarity's eyes widened momentarily, but she recovered very quickly and almost seemed to puff up.
My, you certainly know how to give a mare compliments. You must look like you didn't realize you're doing it,
she praised, looking amused. I blinked in confusion, not sure what she was even talking about. Compliment? My empty pockets and lack of employment were depressing, not something really to be celebrated, and this level of expertise was way out of budget. Birdie stared blankly at me for a few more seconds, suddenly matching my confused expression. Then the realization hit her.
Oh. Or you didn't realize that was a compliment.
she corrected gently. Oh, did I screw up again? I'm sorry, Miss Rarity. If I offended, I didn't mean to. I rapidly apologized, bowing my head gently.
Oh, no, you're fine. There's no reason to apologize, really. It just means that you were being truthful instead of striving to compliment. That's much, much better.
She reassured, smiling again then. Sweetie Belle giggled and sat up on the floor next to my lounge chair.
Oh, and our currency is called bits,
she added. My mind kind of lagged out for a bit until I remembered that I'd said currency a little while back. Oh, thank you, Sweetie Belle, I replied, smiling as I glanced down at her.
Oh yes, thank you, dear sister. I'd momentarily forgotten that you likely didn't know that,
Rarity added, also smiling at her. She looked proud as punch and puffed up on the floor. She looked a lot like Rarity when she did that. I nodded, wishing I could read more books on the subject I was missing. It was weird, being a fully grown adult but having basically no information about the world around me. I just wish I knew all the basics. It's getting frustrating, not knowing what every pony else takes as general knowledge, I muttered, looking around her shop still. All of the gemstones adorning the outfits were amazing, and I wondered how she could afford the overhead on all this. She must be pretty well off indeed. Rarity nodded politely.
Well, I will happily fill you in on anything you so desire. You know, you can always make new memories rather than lamenting on lost ones. And besides, I'm sure Sweetie Belle will agree, but your presence is very much welcome here, worry not.
She spoke, causing me to shift my attention back to her and smile. I can see how you got the element of generosity, Miss Rarity. Thank you, I said softly, feeling less awkward now. She definitely had a way of diffusing uncomfortable thoughts.
Oh, please, just Rarity is fine. You're a friend now, so formalities aren't needed. Now, you mentioned you were staying with Twilight, right? Does she have a cot or anything for you to rest in?
She asked, closing her eyes and making a quiet humming noise after. Sweetie Belle looked at her questioningly before asking,
Wait, doesn't she have a big bed?
My blush peaked, and I immediately wanted to bury my head in the cushions. Rarity just giggled, though, and shook her head.
I'm sure Twilight would like her comfort zone intact, so a cot or hammock would be highly recommended,
she explained diplomatically, smiling down at her little sister. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, I muttered, closing my eyes and trying to fight back the blush before answering her prior question. And no, she doesn't have one. I think she was going to ask some pony before Pinkie Pie distracted her. Rarity sighed and shook her head.
Yes, I heard the outburst earlier before she so rudely stole my assistant Spike. But it is no problem, I'm sure. Applejack will be at the party as well, no doubt. I'm sure she'll have no issue securing a cot for you,
Rarity added, sounding a little irked with Pinkie. I swallowed and shook my head. I'm not so sure she'll be there. I kind of made a bad impression with her, remember? I reminded weakly.
Oh, hardly. Applejack might be a little stubborn sometimes, but she's an honest, hard-working pony, and she trusts her friends,
Rarity argued, frowning at the implication. She just seemed to be nervous that I did something to her sister, I informed, not really sure what to believe. This is the second pony who thought I was worried for nothing, and I didn't think it was a good idea to jump to more conclusions. Sweetie Belle looked shocked, though.
Hey, you didn't do anything to Apple Bloom. I was there and, well, we just chased you into a rock. Applejack didn't believe her?
She asked incredulously, also sounding a little embarrassed.
Sometimes a pony's worry for their loved ones overrides common sense, dear. It's all right. She'll come around soon enough,
Rarity assured Sweetie Belle, smiling down at her. Sighing, I shook my head. Honestly, it was my fault. If I hadn't been so scatterbrained and panicking at the clinic, she probably would have been fine, I explained, feeling a little on the stupid side again for screwing up my first impressions so much. And second impression seemed a lot harder to make count.
You had a concussion and amnesia. It's not your fault that you didn't make very much sense. And I'm sure she understands that.
Rarity disagreed, nodding softly to herself.
That's when somebody hits their head too hard, right?
Sweetie Belle suddenly asked, looking up at Rarity questioningly. A silent coo went through my mind, and I caught a chuckle before it could get out. Well, most of the time. I wondered if I had any siblings. Something told me I didn't have a mate, so children were a bit out of the question. It bugged me that I couldn't remember. Sure, it would be more painful now, but I felt like I was doing everyone I had known a disservice by not honoring their memory.
Yes, that's right. But it wasn't the rock, Sweetie Belle. He had amnesia before that, remember?
She reminded. I saw a brush of light go through Sweetie Belle's mane, and the young filly cooed. A telekinetic brushing? Huh, very interesting. Sweetie Belle nodded softly after opening her eyes again to a half-lidded state.
Yeah. I'm glad it wasn't us that caused it, but still,
she added, looking backwards and up at me. I smiled down at her and shook my head. Not your fault at all, Sweetie Belle. And you and your sister have been a big help to me so far, I assured. Sweetie Belle grinned and nodded, looking backwards and upside down at me. Rarity snickered and then smiled at me instead.
Very good with kids. You'd make a good full-sitter if you needed some bits on the side,
Rarity pointed out, gesturing with her forehoof. I laughed. Yeah, if I'm ever going to be able to afford some proper clothes, I might have to, I joked, causing Sweetie Belle to snicker again. Rarity just smirked.
Don't worry about it. I've prepared dresses for my friends, so if I have some free time, I might like to try my hoof at designing a suit or something similar for you. Or at least a saddlebag, no?
She suggested, tilting her head at me. My eyes widened a little, and I felt surprised. How had she known that I liked the saddlebag earlier? Okay, well, chances are that she didn't, and it was just speculation and coincidence. Oh, well, I'd hate to be a burden or anything. You're probably very busy with clothing orders and all. But I definitely wouldn't mind a saddlebag, I admitted. For some reason, Rarity blushed again, lightly this time after I mentioned clothing orders. I didn't really understand this mare, but she was a lot more relaxed than most of the ponies I'd met so far. Ramadash just seemed really high-strung, like dynamite with legs. Pinky was like a spastic ferret on sugar. Rarity just seemed relaxed and confident. It was kind of refreshing. I made a mental note to visit her when she wasn't busy.
Oh, it would be nothing to make you a saddlebag. Complimenting your colors would be easy enough too. You must be stylish after all. I'll see what I can surprise you with later,
she agreed, smiling now and looking as if she looked forward to it. Well, she was a designer, so she probably enjoyed her work. I nodded quietly, still flustered at all the generosity. Thanks, Rarity. Although I have been here a while, and I was supposed to go see Fluttershy before I'm supposed to be back at the library, I explained, feeling a little bit bad that I had to go so soon. Rarity smiled contentedly and nodded.
I understand. To be honest, I have some more work to do before I'm clear for the party tonight, but I'll definitely be there, worry not,
she reassured properly, puffing again. I chuckled and nodded towards her, starting to find her puffed pose a little cute. All right. I look forward to seeing you two tonight then, I agreed, looking down at Sweetie Belle as well. She perked up instantly and nodded. Rarity smirked and then sighed.
Fine. As this is a special occasion, you can stay up past your bedtime, but I want no complaints when we get home, all right?
She offered, laying down a harsh ultimatum. Sweetie Belle, however, threw a perfect salute.
Yes, sis, thank you,
she gushed, smiling happily. Rarity patted her gently on the head and nodded as I got up off the couch. Thanks, you two. I'll see you later then, I thanked, feeling a lot better than when I came in. Rarity nodded in a courtly fashion towards me as I headed out the door. The front one, this time. Finding Fluttershy's house was pretty easy for me, seeing as I'd basically been there already, and the memory was very fresh in my mind. Even if I hadn't, the sheer volume of animals in the proximity would have given me a pretty good scientific estimate to go with. Walking quietly along the path, I stopped to sniff at several of the flowers along it. The smells wafting along the breeze were pleasant, to say the least, and I felt more relaxed. I couldn't tell if it was because of the smells directly or if the visit with Rarity had been more therapeutic than I had thought. There was a light tickling sensation, and I sneezed suddenly, knocking myself off of my yet untrained feet and landing me squarely on my rear. I rubbed my nose with a hoof and sighed. Walking was still a bit of a challenge, it seemed. I didn't trip often, but I still wasn't exactly the most stable thing to grace the landscape. Standing up again, I used my tail to dust off my butt and continued down the path. It was difficult to ignore the small squirrel in the tree that sounded like it was laughing at me. Were all of the animals largely sentient here? There didn't seem to be much in the way of natural predators at all, and I wondered at the state of their ecosystem. Still, that wasn't really a subject I was trained in, so I had to let the thought go. I was still surprised that a majority of the animals paid little to no heed to my presence. Maybe they were just used to ponies being gentle and not doing anything to harm them? Or yet again, maybe it was because of the proximity to her that did it. I noticed a huge number of birds near her house, seemingly content with chirping amidst themselves. Walking up to the door, I noticed them stop and watch me quietly, as if unsure of my being here. Trying not to get nervous again, I quietly knocked on Fluttershy's door. Moments passed uneventfully. I yawned, suddenly feeling a little sapped of energy after all of my walking, and looked up towards the sky. She was a Pegasus, right? Maybe she was out and about, flying and whatnot. Did she have weather duties like Rainbow Dash did? My eyes locked onto a rogue cloud, and I frowned. What was that? I squinted and looked closer, shadowing out the sun with my hoof. A small tuft of rainbow coloring was extending off the side of the cloud. My eyes weren't tricking me after all. Well, that seemed unusual for a cloud. Unless there was some sort of tagging system that I didn't know about, chances were that that was a mane or tail of a pony. And, having not seen any other rainbow-colored ponies around, I could only speculate that it was Rainbow Dash up there. I vaguely recalled that Pegasi could apparently walk on and interact with clouds. If it wasn't a conscious thing, maybe one could sleep on a cloud? I pondered that idea quietly, sitting on the front walk while looking up. Having wings would be awesome, really. Such a pity that I would increase my likelihood of death by fatal velocity by a good few thousand%. More than that on the first attempt at flight. Flattening my ears back, I sighed. Fitting in really wasn't something I was so good at, it seemed. Even in a new world with a new body, I was adjusting very slowly. With the reading, I had hoped my knowledge would let me just slip into place, but it really wasn't as easy as I had thought. I felt tired just after an afternoon of talking to ponies. How was I expecting to ever have enough energy to work a full-time job on a farm? I felt weary just thinking about it. Suddenly, there was a sharp intake of breath from somewhere to my left. Huh? Turning and looking over my shoulder, I noticed a very lovely creature looking towards me. Her yellow coat shone brightly in the sunlight, and her pink mane and tail accented her shape very nicely. I inadvertently caught a blush as Fluttershy blinked once and remained frozen there. There was an incredible sense of deja vu as we locked eyes and just stared at each other. I have no idea how long it went on for. Minutes? Maybe hours? No. Hours was a bit extreme. I think I would have noticed the sudden hunger and the light shifting from the sun moving. Eventually, though, her expression softened, and she thawed, stepping out of her prior frozen appearance mid-stride. I rotated in my sitting position to face her, still eye-locked. She didn't even seem to blink as she just kept watching me. Her pose was more relaxed now, however, and she gently yet fluidly sat down on her haunches, tilting her head a little. I suddenly had no clue what to say. My tongue felt like it had swelled to impossible sizes and gummed up my mouth. She looked about as nervous as I felt, and we sat there for even longer, just staring. Her sky blue eyes were so soft and gentle looking, and I caught myself getting some heat in my cheeks, and I couldn't look away. The gentle slope of her mane, the tender tucking of her feathered wings against her sides, and even the way her tail curled around her flank as she sat there, it was all just so graceful, radiating a gentleness that I hadn't seen before. My eyes widened a little as her cheeks started to turn a little pink. Her eyes suddenly widened alongside mine, and I saw a bit of concern in her expression, as if she was suddenly worried she had offended me. I smiled, trying to reassure her, and it seemed to work, and her smile returned. And then something collided with the back of my skull, and I went from smiling to gasping in shock before smashing my face into the dirt of her walkway. Fluttershy let out a startled yelp, and I felt her scurrying to my right.
Oh no! Oh no! Are you okay?
I heard in a very tender voice to my right. Ow! Instead of responding, I just lay there, contemplating just going to sleep and never waking up. Well, massive head trauma was apparently my #1 chance of dying still. My left eye opened painfully to get a brief glimpse of the dirt and a remarkably detailed up-close look at a pebble, before looking up and out from the ground. An apple landed in my field of vision, with a newly formed bruise on one side and rolled away from me. Damn you, apples!
There's what now?
Came from above, somewhere, in a sleepy-sounding Rainbow Dash voice.
Dash? You dropped an apple and hit some pony. Could you maybe come down here and at least get your apple? If it's not too much trouble?
I heard Fluttershy ask quietly. Wow. If Rainbow heard that at all, it would be an absolute miracle. But I guess miracles happen because there was a flapping noise, and I felt a brief burst of air behind me. I slowly tried to get my forearms under me again, currently spread eagle and very prone, and feeling quite flattened.
Oh, what the hey, man? Why is it that whenever I drop something lately, you try to catch it with your face?
Rainbow Dash asked behind me, just dripping with sarcasm.
Oh my, this isn't the first time?
Fluttershy asked, sounding worried. I glared back at Rainbow Dash, who had her forelegs folded over her chest and was wearing a similar expression. She felt grumpy to me, and I looked over at Fluttershy, who was staring at her now instead. Rainbow hadn't told her? I sighed, but decided not to say anything, partially out of respect and partially out of a desire to not get blown up again. Defeated by myself this time, I just looked away. Rainbow glared at me for a few seconds before rolling her eyes and slapping a hoof to her face.
Okay, let me try that again,
she requested, thinking for a moment before continuing with,
Sorry for hitting you with the apple.
Shaking my head, I suddenly wished I hadn't as it gave a sharp throb. I must have winced as Fluttershy made a quiet eep noise. Suddenly, I was yanked sideways faster than I could react and unceremoniously deposited onto a soft couch. Rainbow snickered as she hovered inside Fluttershy's house as well, and watched as Fluttershy rapidly gathered up medical supplies. "It's all right, Rainbow. Ow," I muttered once my head stopped spinning. She landed gently next to the couch, still watching Fluttershy zipping around, gathering medical stuff. I didn't really feel that bad except for my headache.
You should totally stop trying to catch things with your head, though,
she reminded, winking at me. I gave her an irked glare and she just grinned. Suddenly, Fluttershy zipped over and wrapped a towel around my forehead with an ice pack in it. She fussed with the edges, hovering in front of me, before darting away again.
She likes helping injure things, if you couldn't tell,
Rainbow added, returning to watching her. Yeah, I'd noticed. She seems very shy, though, I muttered, watching her as well. Rainbow shook her head.
Normally she's a lot worse than this. But, you're not really intimidating, so I guess it's just easier for her to open up,
she offered. Hey! I protested, crossing my forelegs irritably. Rainbow just snickered at me as Fluttershy came back with a bit of what looked to be some sort of salve. She carefully slid up the cold pack and bandages and applied some to the new bruise I imagined I had on the side of my head.
Now just hold still, please. You'll be feeling better in no time,
she assured quietly, smiling at me. I looked up at her and smiled back, and she suddenly seemed to remember that she was treating a pony instead of a woodland creature. She gave a small, fluttering hop away from me, landing on the armrest of the couch, and Rainbow Dash started laughing.
Oh, come on, Fluttershy. You were fine a moment ago. Besides, doesn't he look familiar?
She asked, looking back at me. Fluttershy tilted her head and scrutinized me for a few more seconds. Her eyes locked with mine again, and I tried giving her a smile. Her eyes suddenly widened.
Oh, you're the pony with the gentle eyes that was under my tree,
she muttered, earning a nod from Rainbow Dash.
Wait, didn't Rainbow blow you up?
She then asked, looking back to her friend. Rainbow momentarily appeared stunned and averted her gaze.
Well, yeah, I'd forgotten about that part, but he's fine, as you can see.
She distracted. Fluttershy looked skeptical, but turned her attention back to me. Now I was blushing lightly and lay down on the cushion, tucking my legs under me. For some reason, I was seriously nerved out, like I was walking on eggshells over a pit of lava. I really didn't want to disturb anything in the house, so I just stayed still. Maybe I was just afraid of offending or scaring her? I don't know. After a few seconds, Fluttershy smiled and plopped down onto her rug.
See? He's a nice guy, Fluttershy. You don't have to worry about him,
Rainbow Dash declared, grinning and flopping her foreleg over my back. It felt warm, so I just let it rest there. Well, as long as there are no apples or other falling objects near me, I'm reasonably safe, I muttered, holding the side of my head with my hoof. Fluttershy actually giggled at that. Barely audible, but there. Before timidly asking,
do you think you could tell us how you came here? I mean, if you have time, of course.
I chuckled. I can, if it won't bore you two to tears, I added, averting my gaze and giving a weak sigh. Were they all this curious, or are they just being polite? Rainbow Dash gave my side a shove and stuck her tongue out at me.
Nah, I'm sure we have time to kill before the party regardless,
she pointed out. Wait, Pinky managed to get invitations out already? I was suddenly very scared of that mare, more than before. But, swallowing my reservations, I nodded and broke into my second recounting of the tale today.